November 1932, Western Australia. The Great Depression is crushing the world economy. Australian farmers are desperate. Wheat prices have collapsed. They're trying to survive by growing more wheat, but there's a problem. 20,000 emus have invaded their farmland. Emus are large, flightless birds. They stand 6 feet tall. They weigh up to 120 pounds. And they're eating and destroying thousands of acres of crops. The farmers petition the government for help. The government's solution? Send in the military. On November 2, 1932, the Australian Army deploys soldiers armed with Lewis machine guns and 10,000 rounds of ammunition to fight the emus. This is a military operation. Official orders. Military personnel. Government-issued weapons and ammunition against birds. 1 month later, the military withdraws. They fired thousands of rounds, killed maybe 50 emus. The emu population is largely intact and still eating crops. The emus won. This is the Great Emu War of 1932, a military campaign that Australia's own government later called an embarrassment, where trained soldiers with machine guns were defeated by flightless birds. This isn't a joke. This isn't exaggeration. This is documented Australian military history. And the emus remain undefeated to this day. To understand how Australia ended up at war with birds, you need to understand what was happening in Western Australia after World War I. The Australian government had promised land to soldiers returning from the war. Soldier-settler programs gave veterans farmland in Western Australia to start wheat farms. The problem? Much of this land was marginal, barely suitable for agriculture. The government was essentially giving away land that nobody else wanted. But the veterans tried. They cleared land, planted wheat, worked desperately to make the farms viable. Then the Great Depression hit. Wheat prices collapsed. The farmers were already struggling. Now they were going bankrupt. The government, trying to help, encouraged farmers to plant more wheat. More production would compensate for lower prices, they thought. So the farmers planted more wheat, cleared more land, created more farmland. And the emus noticed emus are native to Australia. They're migratory birds, traveling vast distances following rainfall and food sources. After breeding season in the interior, emus naturally migrate toward the coast, where water is more reliable. The new wheat farms were directly in the migration path, and freshly planted wheat fields looked like an all-you-can-eat buffet. In October 1932, approximately 20,000 emus arrived in the farming districts around Campion and Walgoolan. They weren't attacking. They were just eating and trampling and destroying. Emus are efficient destroyers. A flock of emus can devastate a wheat field in hours. They eat the grain, trample the stalks, break through fences, allowing rabbits to get in and cause more damage. The farmers tried everything. Scarecrows didn't work. Emus aren't scared of stationary objects. Fencing was too expensive, and emus could break through or jump over most barriers. Shooting individual emus with rifles was ineffective. They're fast, they're tough, and there were 20,000 of them. The farmers were desperate. They organized delegations to Perth, the capital. They met with politicians. They demanded government help. And someone had the bright idea, this is a military problem. Send in the army. The Minister of Defense was Sir George Pearce. He approved the operation. This would be a military exercise with practical benefits. Soldiers would get training. Farmers would get relief. Emus would be eliminated. Major GPW Meredith of the 7th Heavy Battery of the Royal Australian Artillery was given command. He was assigned 2 soldiers, Sergeant S. McMurray and Gunner J. O'Halloran. They were equipped with 2 Lewis machine guns. These weren't small weapons. Lewis guns were serious military hardware, used in World War I, effective range of several hundred yards, rate of fire 500 rounds per minute. Against birds, they were also given 10,000 rounds of ammunition and a photographer to document the operation. The government wanted footage of the successful emu extermination to boost public morale. Major Meredith was confident. Machine guns versus flightless birds, this would be over quickly. November 2, 1932, the Emu War officially began. Day 1, the military team scouts the area near Campion. They locate a group of approximately 50 emus. This should be easy. Set up the Lewis guns. Wait for the emus to get close. Open fire. They wait for the emus to approach. The emus, being wild animals with functioning survival instincts, don't cooperate. They stay out of effective range. After several hours, the soldiers give up waiting. They try to approach the emus. The emus run. Emus can run up to 30 miles per hour. The soldiers, carrying heavy machine guns, cannot keep up. First day result, 0 emus killed. The birds refuse to cooperate with their own execution. Day 2. The soldiers try a different approach. They find a large group of emus, over 1,000, gathered near a dam. Major Meredith orders his men to set up an ambush. This time they'll wait until the emus are close, then open fire before they can scatter. The plan works initially. The emus approach, the soldiers open fire. The Lewis gun jams after killing about a dozen birds. By the time they clear the jam, the emus have scattered into small groups and fled. Second day result, approximately 12 emus killed, several thousand rounds expended. Major Meredith reports, the emus have developed guerrilla tactics. They now operate in small groups, making machine gun fire largely ineffective. The Australian military just accused birds of using guerrilla warfare. Over the next week, the pattern repeats. The soldiers set up ambushes. The emus scatter before they can inflict significant casualties. When they do get clean shots, they discover emus are remarkably difficult to kill. Emus have thick skin and feathers. Their vital organs are well protected. Multiple machine gun rounds often don't drop them. Wounded emus run away and the soldiers can't pursue effectively. Major Meredith becomes increasingly frustrated. His official reports read like he's fighting an intelligent enemy rather than birds. The emus are divided into small groups, making it extremely difficult to inflict casualties. The birds display considerable tactical ability. They have a leader who keeps watch while the rest feed. The emus have learned the range of our guns and stay just beyond effective distance. These are official military reports. About birds, the media starts paying attention. Journalists arrive to cover the operation. What they find is comedy. Soldiers with heavy machine guns, exhausted, chasing birds across the outback. The birds consistently outsmarting them. Newspapers begin running satirical articles. Political cartoons show emus in military uniform. Opposition politicians mock the government in Parliament. One politician suggested issuing medals to the emus. Another recommended the military surrender. On November 8th, after less than a week, the military withdraws. House of Representatives member questioned the operation in Parliament. How many rounds per emu? Official numbers. Approximately 2,500 rounds fired. Maybe 50 emus confirmed killed. That's 50 rounds per emu killed. The Emu War, Phase 1, was an embarrassing defeat. The farmers were still desperate. The emus were still eating crops. Political pressure mounted. On November 12th, the military returned. Phase 2 of the Emu War. Major Meredith, perhaps learning from his mistakes, tried different tactics. More mobile operations, smaller targets, better positioning. It didn't help much. Over the next month, the military conducted sporadic operations. They were more successful than Phase 1. Better tactics, more patience. The official count eventually reached approximately 986 emus killed. But that was out of a population of 20,000. And they'd expended nearly 10,000 rounds of ammunition. The media coverage intensified. International newspapers picked up the story. Australia was being mocked globally. The military was fighting birds and losing. Ornithologist Dominic Cervinti, who witnessed the operation, wrote, "The machine gunner's dreams of point-blank fire into serried masses of emus were soon dissipated. The Emu Command had evidently ordered guerrilla tactics. An ornithologist was describing emu military strategy, December 10th, 1932. The military officially withdrew. The operation was terminated. The Emu War was over. Final official tally. Approximately 986 emus killed. Nearly 10,000 rounds expended. Emu population largely intact. Crop destruction continuing. The emus had won. The political fallout was immediate. In Parliament, the opposition tore into the government. Senator James Dunn asked, "Wouldn't it have been cheaper to give each emu a cash settlement and transport them elsewhere?" Minister of Defense George Pierce defended the operation. He claimed the soldiers had been successful within their limited scope. The problem was the sheer number of emus. Nobody was convinced. The operation had been a publicity disaster. Australia was an international laughingstock. The military had been defeated by birds. Major Meredith wrote in his official report, "If we had a military division with the bullet-carrying capacity of these birds, it would face any army in the world. They can face machine guns with the invulnerability of tanks." He was comparing emus to tanks in an official military report. The government quietly decided never to deploy the military against emus again. If farmers wanted to kill emus, they'd have to do it themselves. A bounty system was implemented instead. Farmers were paid for emu beaks. Over the next few years, this proved more effective than the military operation. Farmers killed thousands of emus. But the emu population survived. They still migrate. They still eat crops occasionally. They remain undefeated by the Australian military. So what went wrong? How did trained soldiers with machine guns lose to flightless birds? The military's own analysis identified several problems. 1. Emus are fast, 30 miles per hour in short bursts. Machine guns are designed for stationary or slow-moving targets. Emus scattered at the first sign of danger. 2. Emus are tough. Thick skin, dense feathers, small vital areas. Multiple rounds often didn't kill them immediately. Wounded emus would run and couldn't be tracked effectively. 3. Emus adapted. After the first few encounters, they learned to avoid the soldiers. They operated in small groups. They posted lookouts. Whether this was actual intelligence or instinctive survival behavior doesn't matter. It was effective. 4. The terrain favored the emus. Open scrubland. The emus could see the soldiers coming. The soldiers couldn't get close without being detected. 5. The numbers were overwhelming. Even if the military had killed thousands, there were 20,000 emus. The operation would have needed to continue for months to make a real impact. But the real reason the military failed? They were using military tactics against animals. Animals don't follow military logic. They don't hold positions. They don't defend territory. They just run away. The Emus didn't defeat the military through superior tactics. They defeated the military by refusing to engage on military terms. The Great Emu War has become Australian folklore. It's taught in schools, usually as an embarrassing historical footnote. It appears in comedy routines, internet memes. The phrase "Australia lost a war to emus" is shorthand for governmental incompetence. But it's also studied seriously by military historians as an example of how conventional military force can be ineffective against unconventional targets. You can't win a war against a population that won't engage you directly. The emus didn't care about victory. They cared about food and survival. When threatened, they scattered. They didn't need to defeat the military. They just needed to outlast them. This is asymmetric warfare. The emus never chose to fight. They just kept eating crops and running away. The military needed kills. The emus needed to not die. Very different victory conditions. Modern Australia has made peace with the emus. Sort of. Emus are protected in some areas, hunted in others where they cause crop damage. The bounty system continues. Farmers use modern fencing and other deterrents. There's no talk of deploying the military again. Lesson learned. The emu population remains stable. Approximately 700,000 emus in Australia. They're doing fine. In 2019, the Australian government released official documents from 1932 about the Emu War. The documents confirmed all the embarrassing details. The military really did call it a war. They really did withdraw after being unable to achieve objectives. They really did describe emu tactics in military terms. It's all true, not legend, not exaggeration, official military history. The Great Emu War stands as one of history's most absurd military operations. A developed nation with modern military equipment declared war on birds and lost. Major Meredith and his men weren't incompetent. They were skilled soldiers. The equipment wasn't faulty. Lewis guns are reliable weapons. They just couldn't win a war against an enemy that wouldn't cooperate with being killed. November to December 1932. Western Australia. The Australian military versus 20,000 emus. Final score: emus win. Military withdraws. Crops still destroyed. The emus remain undefeated against Australian military forces. And the world learned an important lesson. Some wars can't be won, especially against birds. This is documented Australian military history, official reports, parliamentary debates, contemporary newspaper coverage. It all confirms the same story. Australia went to war with emus and lost. Sometimes the most serious military operations produce the most ridiculous results. The Great Emu War proves it.